What's up? Welcome back. I'm John Stark from MacTheMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and today we're going to talk about The Testaments, Season 1, Episode 4. Things are getting tough out there in Gilead. It's hard out there for a pimp. Uh, this movie it has audio description on Hulu. Um, and I I see that we're trying to make things harder for the girls. Um, there was a development that happened where I looked it up and I realized that something that happens to somebody else in the book they give to somebody else in the series. Spoilers! It's a recap. So we continue to follow it from Daisy's perspective, which is interesting because she's kind of sarcastic. Like her inner voice is sarcastic as things are happening. So she makes for a little bit more of a compelling lead than Agnes, who's like bought into a lot of the bullshit. It's fun to hear Daisy's voice react to things and be like, "Oh my god, really?" So she reacts to seeing some Mayday people who are hung and the tragedy of that, and she's trying to get out. When we saw her yell at her guardian and give him the paper, and she's like, "I need to talk to June." So she yells at a florist because they're supposed to be getting flowers and everything to impress the nuns, because the aunts, they're nuns basically. The aunts are the ones that help pair them up for marriage with the commanders. And you want to make as good of an impression as possible because then you get paired up with a higher commander. And then the ones who don't do so well end up with lesser commanders, higher chance of being abused, those kind of things. So so the greens, you have the greens, the plums, and the pearls. The pearls are the girls that are from other who grew up outside of Gilead and have transferred in. Why? The plums are are the ones who have not had their period, and the greens have had their period and are eligible for marriage. So we're of course focusing on Agnes and Becca, who are sort of more lead centric characters, and there's another character in here, Millie, who ends up sort of getting her. I think her name was Millie, something like that, and she does not have fun time, and she witnesses, and the girls all see Daisy sees what happens, and she's like, "Really, all over that? Like a little bit of spilled tea?" Um, but there's a segment where they're supposed to be presenting the tea, and they had to yell at the Marthas and everything to get the tea just perfect. So it shows these. There's a third girl who also um, her family is like really well connected, and so the idea is that she'll be fine as well. Like she and Agnes are both high up in the hierarchy of things. So the two of them, because they come from higher families, are assumed to be fine in this process. And we find out Becca's from more of a regular family, so she has to really earn her way through the process. But girl number 4 is tripped by um, Agnes's stepmother, which is so weird to say that because obviously Agnes's mother is June because her name is not Agnes, but that's not the point anymore. So Agnes's first adopted kidnapper mother had died, and the commander remarried. What's her name, Pamela or something like that. Patty, I don't know, something is the new um, Mackenzie, Mrs. Mackenzie, and obviously she wants Agnes to have a better shot. So they knock this one girl out of contention pretty quickly, and so she spills a little bit of her tea, and she's apologetic, and she's like, "I'm not going to be married to some man in the colonies, am I? Am I?" Um, so Agnes sees Daisy still talking to her guy, who she clearly has a crush on. But Daisy also clocks this and tells him, that Garth tells Garth that Agnes, she's like, good job, Agnes has a crush on you. And so Garth is a little like, oh shit. Because as Agnes points out to Daisy, like Guardians have been hung for a lot less. So, um, because she thinks Daisy's flirting with Garth, but not. So Daisy's also walking around the Mackenzie property and runs into Commander Mackenzie, who is in another part of the house. And that exchange actually went fairly well. He was not mean. He was kind of nice. He said something about like, I hope Agnes is happy. And then he ends up giving Daisy a chocolate, and he doesn't hit on Daisy. Like, there's nothing about that interaction that was like, huh. I'm not sure we're not setting him up to be like the Bradley Whitford of the series, like he's not that either, but he is not downright an asshole. In the sliding scale of Gilead, it seemed to be like one of the better interactions, especially considering Agnes has a terrible interaction later on, which I'm about to get to. So while we spend most of the time with Daisy, Agnes also goes in for a checkup with the doctor, the one who, at first I was like, it's hard to tell because even though he's being creepy about it, like most men in Gilead are creepy. So when he like molested her breasts in the last episode, it was hard to tell. It's like, is that just, do they just do that in Gilead? Like, it's hard to tell. Is like, are these things that happen in Gilead? But the one thing that wouldn't happen is that he wouldn't be able to sexually abuse her, which is what he does. It's highly insinuated that Agnes is raped, like it's kind of date raped, like knocked out and raped while she's unconscious, because she is going in for her checkup, and as she's slowly passing out for this procedure, she notices that her doctor is taking off his clothes, and you wouldn't need to do that for a medical procedure. So she wakes up very confused, and she doesn't feel good, and she ends up going back, and she notices that there's a part of her undergarment is messed up, and she like the full realization of everything that's happened to her is kind of hits and clocks in. What's interesting though is that I don't think she could tell anybody, because I have a feeling that even in Gilead, while they might kill the man, the fact that she's been sullied would dramatically reduce her chances of being married to what these girls are considering to be the good men. The high commanders, the ones that they'll have nice lives, and I guess these are in general, the nicer guys. So, and you can see that the wives of the higher commanders do have some sort of pull, sort of like the Serena effect. So, they all want that anyway. So it'll be interesting to see if Agnes buries it or doesn't. However, the thing I was going to bring up is the fact that in the book, this happens to Becca, not to Agnes. So they've swapped this so that now our lead is experiencing it instead of watching it happen to her friend in the process. So we'll see what happens next week on the Testaments. But no June this episode. Aunt Lydia didn't really do much. The other aunts were there, but mainly focused a lot on Daisy, a little bit on Agnes, a little bit on Becca, and the other girls. So Daisy sees the florist, by the way. I forgot that they capture the florist. They realize she's part of Mayday, and the florist ends up getting taken away, which horrifies Daisy. So she realizes people are closer. It ends with Daisy listening to she goes into listen to the radio broadcast from Free Boston or whatever. And I didn't get this because it's weird, because when you tune into the radio, right, it's live. So she tuned into the radio at the exact right time for them to go off air. Because basically it's like, Radio Boston, we have a warning for all our It's just like it just goes dead, and she's like, "What?" And she's like freaking out that her radio station has been taken out. So, yeah, she doesn't know what to do anymore. But like the timing of that, right? The timing that she would be sitting there at the exact time that they sometimes when we're thinking about writing a direction, it's a little too on the nose. Just saying. Why did we even need to hear we've already heard the radio station before? Why couldn't it have just been a signal like that so that you heard that the radio was off air and then have Daisy freak out when she realizes her radio is not there for her anymore? That's what I would have done as a director instead of this other, like, well, if they don't hear the words, they don't know what she's listening to. They should. It hasn't been that long. If our memory is that bad, we shouldn't be watching television anymore, or certainly the Testaments. I'm sure there are some bright colored shows that people can watch, like uh, those little kid shows, right? With the Teletubbies. They can watch those. And they can just smile bright colors and be like, it's fun and colorful and cute. If you can't follow a fucking plot, like, then don't watch shit like the Testaments. So I expect when I watch highbrow television, I want highbrow writing. I don't want like her to turn on the radio and be there for the exact moment when Free Boston goes off the air accidentally. Anyway, but we'll see where this goes forward. It's interesting to think because now we're getting closer and closer to Emmy season, and I'm wondering who's going to get nominated and where, in which categories. So, can Chase Infinity get into Best Actress? We'll see. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I'll see you guys on the other side.